Good morning to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for May 15th, 2026. It is the start of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, so now that we are starting hurricane season, and we're also starting as well the daily tropical weather outlooks in the Atlantic, too, per the National Hurricane Center. So because of that, no longer are we going to be talking about weekly tropical weather outlooks. Now it is going to become tropical weather outlook because we're going to be doing these videos now on a daily basis from now all the way till the end of hurricane season. So glad to have you along. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you do, I would really appreciate if you like this video and subscribe to my channel, since we are going to be doing these videos basically on a daily basis for the remainder of hurricane season. So let's get started. What do we have on May 15th, the first day of the hurricane season, and also the first day of tropical weather outlooks in the Atlantic? First of all, very interesting to note, and nothing related to hurricane season, but looks like the National Hurricane Center has now updated their user interface, their UI, on their website, which I thought is cool. They have the two different bars now for the basins, and whether you want to see the 2-day or the 7-day forecasts. I find that pretty interesting. And yeah, nice additions, and a nice new thing to start for a brand new hurricane season. But luckily, no tropical weather activity is expected in the next 7 days in the Atlantic Basin. Obviously, since we are still in mid-May, we typically do not have a lot of activity right now. And then the Eastern Pacific as well. Nothing expected in the next 7 days. So starting off quiet for now in the Pacific for hurricane season. Here's a satellite image of the Atlantic, and you can see obviously why things are quiet. There's really nothing happening at all. We have Saharan air, which is beginning to make its way off the continent of Africa, something typical that we see this time of year, and this pretty much lasts from now till about August. And I'm pretty sure you guys all know what Saharan air is now, and you can already seeing it especially strong in the Eastern Atlantic. And over the coming days, it's probably going to advance westward, and Saharan air acts as a blanket of warm, dry air, which shields and prevents tropical activity from occurring, which is especially why the early season tends to be not very active in the Atlantic Basin. And we are probably especially going to see a lot of Saharan air this year, given that that we are talking about an El Nino. So we're probably going to see a lot more of this, but interesting to see it's already here, as well as the fact that we already have some tropical waves out in the tropical Atlantic right now, none of them posing a threat. Maybe there's, one disturbed weather area here, maybe a tropical wave approaching the islands, and that's probably going to bring some showers and thunderstorms, I would assume. Haven't checked the map, though. Let's actually check and see right now where the tropical waves are. Let's see, tropical weather discussion, surface analysis. Yeah, there is a tropical wave right here near South America. So it's probably, this feature in here somewhere. So I was right. And that's probably going to bring some showers and thunderstorms to the islands, as you guys are probably typically used to, especially during hurricane season. So wouldn't worry about it, but obviously, nice to see things already beginning to come together as we get closer towards hurricane season. And of course, as we start the hurricane season today in the Pacific as well, nothing happening. Very, very quiet, very strong upper level winds, as you can see with the motion of the clouds here. And that's also very prevalent in the Atlantic as well, if you noticed. And that's also typical of the early season, so everything is quiet as it's supposed to be, but especially in the Pacific, you guys are going to have to enjoy this quiet while it lasts, and I think it is probably going to come to an end within the next few weeks, and I'll talk about why towards the end of the video. Let's take a look at the 850 millibar vorticity now, another map that I really like to look at, especially throughout hurricane season. This kind of gives us an idea of how much spin there is in the atmosphere, which generally gives us an idea on whether or not a particular system we're looking at is trying to become a tropical storm or hurricane potentially. And right now with the 850 millibar vorticity, Really nothing much happening. I guess you could see a little bit of the vorticity signature here with that tropical wave near the islands, and also some interesting vorticity as well here, maybe another tropical wave. I did see on the analysis map from the National Hurricane Center, but nothing very eye-popping. And I mean, we do have this huge blob of vorticity here, but that's probably just some sort of extratropical system off the East Coast. Which is common this time of year. We are still in a spring pattern. We've not fully transitioned to the summer pattern yet of the Bermuda High completely taking over, and everything just being warm and muggy and whatnot. But we probably also will actually have to pay attention to the East Coast this year, in my opinion, especially with the extratropical systems, which sometimes, even in the early season, on the tail end of the fronts that these systems produce, we can get tropical or subtropical development to occur. And I think that might happen this year, given that the pattern, especially given the kind of background state we will have, will more than likely generally favor that. So we'll have to watch and see when that does happen, but obviously right now not seeing the signs of it occurring, at least at this very moment. So obviously that's a good thing. Wind shear as well, another thing I like to look at. And obviously this is probably one of the biggest reasons why nothing is happening right now. Look at how much red we have here. Red meaning very high, unfavorable wind shear. It even says here on the key, unfavorable, because this is unfavorable for tropical development. When you have a lot of very, very high wind shear, that does not allow for thunderstorms to organize and eventually flourish and become a nice looking tropical system. And that is in place across the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific as well. I mean, we have a little bit of a pocket here in the far southeastern Pacific where things are a little bit on the tamer side and more favorable side for wind shear, but the rest of the Pacific Basin looking very unfavorable right now. But obviously, over the next several weeks, you will begin to see a lot of these red shadings go away, and probably see a lot more of these greens begin to pop up, especially as we get further into hurricane season, and probably starting pretty soon, as again I'll show you the pattern changing probably in just a few weeks, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And this was literally the website where I got this map from. And by the way, if you want to know the website, it is called the University of Wisconsin. They produce these maps, and I really like them, and I really like the University of Wisconsin because they produce these maps. So thank you, University of Wisconsin. Just had to give them a little bit of a shout out. Why not? But here are the sea surface temperature maps for the Atlantic, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits, which of course is owned and operated by Levi Cowan. So thank you, Dr. Levi Cowan, for producing these maps. I just had to give him his credit. Sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic right now, pretty warm, especially throughout the Caribbean. You even have some 29 degrees Celsius readings beginning to show up in the Western Caribbean. Typical for this time of year, nothing too out of the ordinary, maybe slightly above normal, and even especially, making its way up into the eastern and southern and central Gulf. So already beginning to see that warm up that I always talk about happens in May in the Gulf of Mexico. The northern half is still cooler right now, though, and I saw a tweet from Andy Hazelton earlier how he mentioned that there was a huge gradient between warmer than normal sea surface temperature anomalies in the Gulf in the southern part and cooler than normal sea surface temperature anomalies in the northern part, and I guess you could kind of see that reflected here with the current sea surface temperatures, so that's very interesting to see. But again, this is probably all going to go away in just a matter of about a few weeks now, especially as we get into June. And the rest of the hurricane season, the Gulf of Mexico tends to warm up very quickly, as well as off the southeast coast here with the Gulf Stream. So we're probably going to see all of this warm up very soon, and in just a matter of a few weeks here, we are in mid-May now. We will be primed for tropical development probably by the end of this month. As we get into next month, which is June, which is officially the start of hurricane season, we will definitely be primed by then. In the Eastern Pacific, on the other hand, we are already a pot of boiling water, I must say. 31s widespread here, especially just south of Mexico. and especially in the very prime area of the MDR in the Eastern Pacific this year. And you already see a bunch of these very widespread 26, 27 degrees Celsius water temperatures. And as I've talked about, especially for the last several months, and this is very interesting too, pretty decently warm sea surface temperature anomalies, or sea surface temperatures. This is not the anomaly map. I'm probably going to show you the anomaly map for tomorrow's video. But the sea surface temperatures, very interestingly enough, warm in the strait area here between Mexico and the Baja Peninsula, which is also a part of Mexico. But this area is very warm, interestingly enough, and the Eastern Pacific in general is very warm this year, obviously because we have El Nino incoming. And one of the main key factors as to why we are probably going to see a very active Pacific this hurricane season. Very, very warm waters is going to help fuel a lot of tropical development. But is any of that development going to occur at least in the next week? Well, let's take a look at the models now. Let's look at the GFS here from the 16 run, take it out into time over the next week very quickly, and you can see nothing happens in the Eastern Pacific as of yet. So not quite starting the Pacific hurricane season just yet in terms of tropical development. And one reason why you know that is because you don't see any of these yellow patches here of vorticity becoming circular, and the shades are getting darker and getting into orange and potentially even red. So that basically means that over the next week, the GFS is not expecting anything vorticity-wise to really consolidate and potentially be a signal for any tropical development. So at least over the next week, I could say with confidence that the Eastern Pacific will be quiet. So far, we're looking at a quiet start to the Pacific hurricane season. So the warm waters we have out there right now are not going to come into use just yet, which is obviously a good thing, because when they do start coming into use, we're probably going to see some pretty crazy activity this year. But I'm pretty sure you guys are already aware of that. This is something very interesting you see here on the end of the GFS run, but going to get to that in just a moment. But the GFS here as well for the Atlantic. Let's take a look at what happens here over the next week. And once again, as well in the Atlantic as well, nothing major happens. I mean, we have a front move off the East Coast here, but it doesn't seem like this is really going to do much. But you never know, maybe something will uptrend with the models here, but nothing really happens. At least for right now. We have brisk trades throughout the Caribbean. So as well in the Atlantic, nothing tropical activity-wise is expected, at least over the next week. But what about us taking it out to 2 weeks? And this is something that I typically don't do. I only typically go out to about a week out with the models. That's because that's the time frame that the National Hurricane Center goes out to, 168 hours, which is equal to 7 days. And usually beyond that, you kind of have to take everything with a grain of salt at best. But what I want to show you here, especially as we get into the 10 to 15 day time frame, notice how we start having a bunch of these areas of vorticity begin to show up, especially now with the time frame being the very end of May. And in general, if you look here over Central America, I mean, this is all a part of Latin America, but over Central America, you could see that we start having a lot more low-level spin occur. As you can see by these wind bars here, you generally start seeing a large area of cyclonic turning begin to develop. And the GFS, especially in these kind of situations, really overdo it, and we start seeing a bunch of these weird pockets of vorticity just spin up out of nowhere. I wouldn't take that seriously, but what I'm generally trying to, tell you is that the low-level pattern begins to change as we get towards the end of the month here in the Caribbean, Central America area, and that is a sign of probably more favorable conditions coming to the general region. And usually, I mean, yes, we would probably see some area of development, I think, in the Atlantic possibly. And I mean, I think it's possible this coincides with the start with, May 31st. We're already 2 weeks into the Pacific hurricane season. And in the Atlantic, June 1st is the start of hurricane season. So the fact that we have this here, which, by the way, what I'm trying to show you is that you can already start seeing the signs of a Central American gyre begin to develop here as we get towards the end of the month. So this will be interesting for the Atlantic, but as well for the Eastern Pacific, since Central American gyres also help with development there. And you can see that with the NOAA Global Tropical Hazards Outlook on a weekly basis. They actually have a pretty decent shaded area for potential development in the Eastern Pacific. When? Late May and into the first few days of June. And by that time, we will already decently be we will be at least 2 weeks into the Pacific hurricane season. So we will decently already be into the start of the season. And so the atmosphere changing then, you would definitely think that we probably have a decent opportunity for development to occur somewhere in this region of the world, whether it be in the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico or in the Pacific in that time frame. So I think, if you are a tropical weather tracker, or if you generally want to know, even though things are quiet now, when the first opportunity for development will occur, I think late May, early June will be that time. And I'm going to go over more depth as to why I think so over the next several days, especially tomorrow. And, let's actually talk about what I'm going to be doing here over the next several days, now that we are into the start of the Pacific hurricane season. First of all, today, if you're not already aware, I'm going to be releasing my personal predictions for the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, which I'm going to be doing on Twitter in just a little bit as soon as I post this video. So stay tuned for that, especially if you follow me on Twitter and you're subscribed to me as well on YouTube. Or even if you're not subscribed to me or you follow me on Twitter yet, make sure to go to Twitter, search me up at Danilo Evangelista, same name as I have here on YouTube, and look out for my Eastern Pacific hurricane prediction, which will be coming out once again momentarily. And then tomorrow, obviously, we're going to have a daily tropical weather outlook, but I'm also going to be doing weekly live tropical weather outlook. So I'm going to be live streaming to you on a weekly basis every Saturday, starting tomorrow from now, once again, all the way till the end of hurricane season. And tomorrow, I'm going to go more in depth as to why I think late May and early June, in about 2 weeks or so, will be the time frame to watch for our first potential developments of the hurricane season in the Pacific and maybe in the Atlantic as well. So you want to stay tuned for that. And then obviously June 1st is the start of the hurricane season, and we have multiple things coming on June 1st, which I'll go more into depth in the coming days. So a lot happening here, especially on this channel. As again, we are now into the start of the Pacific hurricane season, but luckily nothing is on the horizon yet in terms of major development. And hopefully it stays that way, but obviously given the kind of pattern we have this year, it is probably not. But enjoy the quiet while it lasts. At least, enjoy the quiet while it's here. But probably going to change late May and early June. And of course, we will examine that more in the coming days. But with that being said, I'm going to end it off for today's video. First video down of probably what will be the next 200 or so videos that we're going to be doing throughout the rest of the hurricane season. So we have a long way to go, but at least we got day one down, right? First day down, at least we got our foot in the door. And of course, it's going to be a long journey from here on out. With that being said, again, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll be back with you guys again tomorrow.